Winter 1945 crushed the forests of Central Europe beneath ice and silence. Snow fell thick as ash. A group of British female POWs ran through the darkness, chased by fear more than soldiers, unsure who hunted them or who might save them. They had escaped hours earlier when bombing tore open their camp's perimeter. Barely dressed and weak from hunger, they fled without direction. Freedom was close, yet every shadow felt like another prison waiting to close in. Sudden voices broke the stillness behind them. English commands, loud and urgent. The women froze, then panicked. To them, uniforms meant danger. They believed Americans would return them to captivity or worse. Driven by terror, they ran toward the river, cutting through the frozen valley. Ice covered its surface like solid ground. No one stopped to test it. Survival demanded speed, not caution. The first woman stepped onto the ice. It cracked sharply beneath her weight. A second later, the surface shattered, swallowing her into black, freezing water. Screams erupted as others fell in after her. The river consumed them instantly. Icy water stole breath and strength within seconds. Heavy coats dragged them under. Arms flailed blindly, fingers clawing at broken ice edges that sliced their skin. From the riverbank, American soldiers shouted in alarm. They dropped their rifles and sprinted forward without hesitation. Enemy or not, drowning soldiers meant only one thing to them: people who needed saving. One American plunged into the river, ignoring the cold that stabbed like knives. Another threw his belt, while others used rifle straps and branches, forming lifelines across the cracking ice. Hands locked together across cultures and fear. The Americans pulled the women free one by one, hauling them onto the snow. Some were unconscious, lips blue, bodies shaking violently from shock. Blankets were wrapped around them immediately. Medics knelt in the snow, rubbing frozen limbs and forcing warm air into stiff lungs. No one asked questions. Survival came first. Only after the women regained awareness did they realize the truth. The men surrounding them were not captors. They were rescuers. American soldiers who had nearly died themselves to save strangers. The British women wept openly, overwhelmed by shock and relief. One whispered apologies through chattering teeth. An American sergeant shook his head and said gently, "You're safe now." They were transported to an American field base nearby. Heated tents, dry clothes, and medical care awaited them. For the first time in years, they slept without fear of guards or punishment. Hot soup was placed in their trembling hands. Real bread followed. The taste alone broke something inside them. Many cried as they ate, realizing how long hunger had ruled their lives. Days later, orders came down from command. The women were to be evacuated, not returned to camps. The Americans classified them as liberated personnel, deserving protection and recovery. They were flown west under military escort. The roar of aircraft engines felt unreal. Below them, war-torn Europe faded away. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also safety they had forgotten existed. The women arrived at a recovery camp in the United States. Clean barracks, warm beds, and open skies greeted them. No barbed wire, no armed guards watching their every movement. Food was plentiful and regular. Fresh water ran freely. Medical staff treated them with patience and respect. For many, it was the first time since capture they felt human again. Compared to their POW experiences, life felt almost unreal. Even compared to wartime Britain, conditions here felt abundant. Rations were generous, fear was absent. Nights were quiet. They were encouraged to rest, write letters home, and recover strength. Some helped in kitchens, others tended gardens. Slowly, the weight of captivity lifted from their shoulders. American soldiers treated them as guests, not burdens. Conversations were kind, curious, and respectful. Laughter returned in small moments, something the women thought they had lost forever. One woman later wrote that the river saved her life twice, once by nearly killing her, and again by revealing who truly stood on the side of humanity in war. As weeks passed, their health improved. Faces filled out. Smiles became natural again. The women began to plan futures instead of merely surviving days. Some struggled with guilt, knowing others had not survived. Counselors helped them process trauma, something unheard of in most wartime systems. Healing was treated as necessary, not weakness. News from Europe eventually reached them. The war was nearing its end. Liberation spread across the continent. The nightmare they escaped was finally collapsing. The women prepared for eventual return home. Yet many admitted that America had given them something more than safety. It had given them dignity when they needed it most. They thanked the soldiers who had saved them from the river. No medals were given, no headlines written, just quiet handshakes and shared memories of frozen water and broken ice. Years later, some would speak of that night as the moment fear lost its grip. The moment strangers became family, bound not by flags, but by survival. History often counts victories in land gained or enemies defeated. But sometimes, victory is measured in lives pulled from icy water by hands that refuse to let go. The American soldiers never saw themselves as heroes. They did what felt natural. In war, compassion was their quiet rebellion against cruelty. The British women carried that lesson home, that even in the darkest winters of humanity, mercy still existed, waiting to surface when least expected. The frozen river eventually melted with spring. No marker remained to show what happened there. Only memories lived on, carried across oceans and generations. War destroys, but moments like these remind us what survives. Courage, empathy, the refusal to abandon others, even when fear demands it. For those women, America became more than a place. It became a chapter of healing written after years of suffering and silence. Their story was never meant to glorify war. It was meant to honor humanity found within it, fragile yet powerful enough to change lives forever. The ice that broke nearly ended them. Instead, it revealed the truth, that help sometimes arrives wearing the face you fear most. In the end, no bullets were fired that night. Only hands reached out, only lives were saved. That was enough. History may forget their names, but not their survival, not the river, not the rescue, not the kindness that followed. This is one of the quiet stories of World War II. Not written in strategy books, but in memories passed down softly through time. Because sometimes the greatest acts of war are not acts of destruction, but moments when strangers choose to save one another instead. After the war officially ended, officials reviewed the women's records. Many had no families left, their homes destroyed by bombing. Temporary stays in America quietly turned into longer recoveries no one rushed to end. They learned new routines, morning roll calls without fear, meals without ration cards, sleep without nightmares of guards and sirens. Peace felt strange, almost suspicious after years of constant tension. Some women began helping American nurses treat wounded veterans. Though once prisoners themselves, they found purpose again, offering comfort they understood deeply through shared suffering and silent empathy. Letters arrived from Britain describing shortages, rubble-filled streets, and slow rebuilding. Compared to that reality, their American camp felt almost untouched by war's destruction. Gratitude mixed with guilt. Commanders allowed cultural gatherings. British songs echoed across the camp at night, answered by American laughter. Differences faded. Survival stories replaced ranks, accents, and flags. One woman kept the belt used to pull her from the river. She said it reminded her that life can change in seconds, and that strangers may risk everything without asking who you are. Psychological wounds healed slower than frostbite ever had. Nightmares returned often, but now help came with patience instead of punishment. Recovery was treated as strength, not weakness. As months passed, some women chose to return to Britain. Others accepted work programs in America, rebuilding lives where kindness had first found them after captivity. Farewells were emotional. Soldiers who once pulled frozen bodies from the river now hugged healthy women with steady hands. No speeches were made, none were needed. Years later, families would hear fragments of the story. A frozen river, American voices, hands pulling hard against death. The rest often remained unspoken, too heavy for simple words. History books rarely mention moments like this. There are no official battle names for compassion, no medals for refusing to walk away from drowning strangers. Yet those moments shaped lives more deeply than any victory parade. They proved that humanity could survive even when the world seemed determined to destroy itself. The women aged, raised families, and lived quietly. But winter nights sometimes brought memories of cracking ice and the shock of cold water closing around them. Each time they also remembered hands pulling them back, voices saying, "Hold on." Proof that hope can exist even in the darkest hours of war. For the American soldiers, it became just one night among many. Yet somewhere deep, they carried the knowledge that they had saved lives without firing a single shot. War measures power in destruction. Humanity measures it in restraint, in mercy, and in the courage to help when fear would be easier. The frozen river never appeared on maps, but its story traveled far, carried in memories, letters, and quiet gratitude passed from generation to generation. This story does not belong to one nation. It belongs to everyone who believes compassion can exist, even when the world collapses into violence. World War II was filled with darkness, but within it were small lights, moments where people chose to save, not destroy. This was one of them. And long after the ice melted, what remained was not fear, but proof that humanity can rise above war, even for a single life-saving moment.